I have two goals with today's video. One, to inspire you to use resources to find great color palettes, and two, to celebrate Concord and Ninth's 10th anniversary as a company that continually creates fresh and innovative designs for the card making and craft community. Let's take a look at how this labor of love card came together. That video is coming up next. So here's a look at the products I'm featuring today, and this is the Sweet Stems dies and coordinating stamps. There is a layering stencil set, and I'll be sure to link that as well, but I misplaced it and I am only going to use the die, but that's okay because I wanted to feature paper piecing. So I did a bunch of die cutting off camera, but what I want to feature as well is this DIY color deck from Spellbinders. I used one of the cards, there are 52 in this box, to come up with a palette. And the cool thing about it is you take a photo, you find your cardstocks that match, you punch out a little sample square, and you have an instant palette. And look at the back. Rule of thirds. Hey, I talk about that all the time. There are Creative Spark design things on the back of each card. So that's how I picked this palette. I would not normally come up with a palette like this, and I think it is so kind of retro and cool. So I've got a lot of paper piecing to do, but you know what? I'm all about that today. They're all going in here, and first things first, I need to make a card base, and I decided instead of mixing and matching leaves, and by the way, the colors here are pistachio, avocado, pimento, sunflower, and pink lemonade. Those are the colors that I pulled to make this palette work with Concord and Ninth cardstock. Now here I'm doing my little glue technique. I did not invent this, but I love this for a die that has a ton of stuff. So I took a pastry brush, cut the bristles down to 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm just putting some glue on an easy to clean surface. I just let the glue dry on there and then peel it off or use an adhesive eraser. But this just allows you to pop on little dots of glue on detailed die cuts, and it's easier than working your way around with like a little bottle of glue. You drop it in. I use a corner like on my Score Buddy, or you can use the corner of your Misty or a stamp wheel, and you line it up, easy peasy and breezy. Now comes the fun part. Well, unless you don't like paper piecing, but I'm telling you, once you get going, I think, for example, if you like puzzles, this is a kind of puzzle that is easier than a puzzle because the shapes are so much easier to see and work with. The space is usually smaller, but it's for people who like to put things into other things. And that is me, because the finished look of anything that has been paper pieced like this is really fun. You don't really know if you're the recipient, like, how did they do that? It's just, I think it can be a really impressive and statement kind of a design. So I've got stems and leaves, and the great thing is, as you go, you might have misplaced a piece. I had to cut out 2 panels of avocado because I had tossed a few of the leaves into my recycle bin, but it's not that hard once you have all the pieces cut. Now here I ran 3 different panels through to get all these flowers and all these centers, and then I'm just going to work my way around and piece them in. I like using Connect glue. It's a really strong adhesive. You don't need a ton of it to hold those in place. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't oozing out anywhere as well. So I just worked my way around, pieced it all in, and I am loving this palette. So this is a very retro color palette to me. I would not come up with this ever if I was just left to my own devices, because you may be surprised to hear this, but choosing color is not one of what I would call my skills as a designer. I tend to keep things really simple. I like analogous colors because I know how to work with those. I like monochromatic colors, but this feels a little more adventurous. And yet you'll see at the end when I bring in my color wheel, they really kind of are analogous colors. You know, it takes me a while to see the forest for the trees. Now, here, as I'm placing the centers, I thought to myself, do I really want to worry about the little small, tiny pieces? No, I decided that would be a little much, and then I would have been here for hours on end. And that's okay to let that cardstock show through. And I could have done white centers, I could have done metallic gold, but I think that looks great. And now it's time for the greeting. I'm going to use the Big Hey Friend. Now, when you get your stamps, first off, you have to kind of prime them a bit. You can use your hands. I use this conditioner. You just want it to look a little cloudy. So if you're ever stamping and you don't get a great impression with new stamps, it's just because of the coating on the photopolymer. So just rub your hand over it a few times or pick up a stamp conditioning eraser and that will help. Now here I'm going to lay down, I think three layers of embossing ink because I really don't want any little areas to not have ink. I want this to be very solid and I want it to be all gold once I have melted the powder. This is Gilded from Brutus Monroe. Tap some on. Oh, and it covered beautifully. And then I'll just brush away a little bit. It was pretty clean because of the anti-static powder that I put on my cardstock, but I used my little angled shader just to, get a few little errant pieces of the embossing powder out, and then brought my heat tool in and quickly melted the powder. And it's so solid and just beautiful. There's not like a blemish in it. It just turned out great. The coordinating die, I love when they have a nice, generous frame. So easy to line up that way. So I'll cut that out. And then I'm going to cut out a second one just to have a little bit more support for the greeting. I've got foam squares on the back. I put that liquid glue on for a little bit of float time. And that's it. Once this is down, that is the card. And I'm not going to do anything else. I think it just is such a great color combo. It really stands on its own. Let's do a quick design review. One of the things I was curious about is what is this color scheme on a color wheel, but the reality is it doesn't really have one. I mean, what we have here when we look at sort of these red-orange colors, if we go directly across, let's see, where's our complementary? It puts us in blue territory, so it's not really there. If I go into my red-orange and I look at my split complement, it gives us blue-violet and sort of the yellow-green, which is kind of in this palette. But then you have your yellows and you have your pinks. So it really is one of those palettes that's kind of like, well, we saw something in nature, we saw a photograph, and it works really well. Although I will say these tones here work in a rainbow order. We're going with pinks into the reds, into the yellows, into the greens. So really it is sort of analogous color to one extent, if you consider going from the red oranges into the yellows, and of course pink counts here, and then finishing off into the green. So actually that is that's an analogous scheme. It just took me a minute. So it's really cool to have that scheme to start with. That's why I like things like the DIY color deck. I don't know how many are in here. I should know this often. There are 52 color cards in here, and I have used these for a few card projects that I have already done little palettes for here in the back. But again, it just gives you a starting point for color. You find the cardstock that you have to create whatever palette you see in front of you. And it's really great for if you're stuck for color, you need ideas, because listen, I don't think outside of the box very often when I'm choosing color. However, as I look at this feels very out of the box for me. And the reality is Concord and Ninth has some of the most beautiful colors of cardstock, and it's just cool to sit down and make your palette and then start a labor of love like this card project today. Very center weighted. I don't even need to bring my grid in. We just have little colors repeating, and we have our centers in each one being the same color. And again, I wasn't about to paper piece in the little white centers. I feel like that it can stand on its own, but you certainly could. And that wraps up today's video. You can find links for all of the products I used in today's video in the YouTube description box. I'll also have a blog post with photos and more details about this card over on my website. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, I'd love to have you, so please hit that subscribe button and be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss the next time I post. Here is another card featuring some really cool products from Concord and Ninth that you might be interested in checking out, and I will see you in that video. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.